right, and we'll get started. So again, my name is Sean Phillips, Senior Solution Engineer with OpenSpace. I'm based here in New York City. Previously, in my previous life, I was a project manager for a custom home builder out in the Bay Area in California. I left there and joined PlanGrid and then joined Revisto from there, and actually joined OpenSpace when I was living overseas with my family. So I've worked with our top European and now our top US customers. And I'll let Elliot introduce himself and give a little background as well.
Elliot Christiansen with Cleveleand Construction based in Cleveland, Ohio. I work with our executive team. In addition to my role in operations, I spend a lot of time looking for new technology to implement across the country or across the company to make ourselves more efficient across our project teams, implementing it both in the office and in the field.
Cool. So just to get started, Elliot, obviously we're going to be talking about progress tracking, but with progress tracking, it all starts with OpenSpace capture. Can you share a little bit on how you and Cleveleand Construction started using OpenSpace?
Yeah, so we actually have an internship program that we run every summer. And part of that internship program is an end of year presentation. And we actually ask our interns to present on one thing that they would use to improve the company. And last year, one of our interns presented on OpenSpace as part of their end of year presentation and said that they would use it to improve a process that we have. One of our processes was we'd take a Insta360 camera. We would take stationary photos of units in apartments or hotels before we install drywall or before we turn units over at the end of the project. And then we'd upload those to Procore. And it was a really slow, tedious process. That intern did it that summer. And as part of their end of year presentation, they did a presentation on OpenSpace. Everybody was extremely impressed with it. And 6 months later, the whole company introduced OpenSpace enterprise-wide.
Very cool. And you've been successful with it. It's rolled out across your projects. Once you had OpenSpace established as your capturing solution, what was it with progress tracking, that piqued the interest of the team, and how, did that kind of discovery and exploration go?
So with the progress tracking piece, we instituted OpenSpace first. Didn't know about the Disperse progress tracking part. The OpenSpace piece was very well adopted because everybody had done the older way that was very time consuming. So we got very easy adoption with OpenSpace. The Disperse piece, we piloted it on one project. It's still on that project now. And it was the speed at which it was implemented by the Disperse team and the speed at which we started to get real accurate data back was pretty astounding to our executive team. The accuracy of the data, some of the things that we were given that we could ask our field team questions on without having to play 20 questions with them like we used to have to, really made it a good two-way conversation with the field team and not necessarily an adversarial conversation like it could have used to been back when we would call them, look at job site photos and ask maybe why wasn't somebody there. We had a really good walk through the job virtually, and it was more of a helping conversation versus a trying to play gotcha with the schedule.
Gotcha. And for your field teams, obviously, having run construction projects myself, there's always a tension between the office and field, whether we want to admit it or not. I think it's just, people on site feel they're tackling the real problems, and the people in the office are just asking questions that they should just understand. So besides the improved kind of communication and, lower tension, are there other values of the data that are helping your teams, whether that's, the superintendent or the project manager or, in the corporate office for you guys?
Yeah, one of the features that we didn't even realize we were going to get with Disperse, we thought it was just strictly going to be schedule tracking. was the spotlights. When we first went through, it was maybe the third week we were doing it, and we were going through our weekly call, and we started to see these spotlights pop up, and we were seeing walls were removed or plumbing was removed, and it was pointing these things out. We were asking questions to our superintendents, and they didn't know these things were removed. And obviously they were walking past it because the open space capture was picking it up. We were bringing it up on the calls, and it was helping them knowing to go back to the subcontractors in the field and ask the questions. Hey, what's going on with this? Why did this come out? What are we doing to get it fixed? And it was easier for them to manage the project in the field. They didn't have to create an observation manually. They didn't have to go find it in the field. They didn't have to close it when it was done. The system was doing that all automatically for them, with no additional work on their part. If there was an issue that needed to be pushed into Autodesk or Procore via an RFI, you could push it right from OpenSpace. It made it extremely seamless and easy to manage.
Yeah. I know we have Q&A coming up at the end, but since I've got you talking about the experience of not just OpenSpace, but Disperse, a quick question that popped up, and it's a good one, is have you seen, some benefit to your kind of client management by using OpenSpace and Disperse?
Yeah, we actually give access to OpenSpace to a lot of our clients now. It's not something that we thought at the beginning that we would do. A couple of things that we use it for: we work all over the country. So we run our general contracting division out of two offices, Cleveland, Ohio, and Charlotte, North Carolina, but we work basically eastern half of the United States. And our clients are all over the country. Each month, a lender or the owner has to walk the job to approve a pay application. Sometimes the pay applications don't line up with their walks. So we're able to give them access to the project in OpenSpace to facilitate that walk virtually. The Disperse on the project we piloted, we provide the Disperse reports with the pay application. That helps facilitate that proof that we are as far along as we say that we are. We review it in our OAC meetings bi-weekly with them to kind of point out some highlights. When we do have issues on certain floors in certain units, with RFIs or different design questions that need answers, Disperse does do a good job of pointing out exactly where the issues are. You get a floor plan that says these units are complete, or these units are progressing on pace, and these units are stalled out or they're not complete. And it paints a really transparent picture of where the project is in a way that is very easy for somebody to understand. Not everybody can understand a Gantt chart. Not everybody can understand, a P6 schedule. It really puts it in a different perspective for somebody that's not used to reading something in a normal way.
Yeah. No, the ability to share context across, the multiple groups that are involved in any project. It's incredible for me to see across the customers that I'm working with, the value proposition there. It's been a lot of fun. Doesn't quite make me want to go back to construction, but it is, an enjoyable process. You've mentioned the client management side, the increase in communication. Were there any surprises, like things that you really didn't expect from, either OpenSpace, the OpenSpace Disperse partnership, kind of like the pleasant upside of implementing a technology?
I'd say with OpenSpace, anytime we've implemented a new technology, and we've implemented a lot, specifically recently, we've always had issues with adoption. You always get people that, specifically in construction, it's a hard industry to implement technology in. I think everybody would agree with that. OpenSpace was very easily adopted, and I think it was because we were using 360 cameras on jobs. We had a policy. It was cumbersome, but it was a necessary policy because we've had problems in the past with documentation where we'd have still photos and we'd be missing something in those photos. OpenSpace took that policy and makes it extremely easy to follow that policy and cut out 90% of the work that the guys had to do. And with OpenSpace, we've been able to relax some of our other policies with daily job photos and how detailed we require description on the photos and location tags and different things like that in Procore or Autodesk, and make the superintendent's lives a little easier. With Disperse, the biggest surprise that I had was the accuracy of the schedule. I constantly would ask our project manager every week when we would get the reports, is this really where we are? Is this percentage accurate? Just being skeptical of the AI piece included in it. And the single biggest surprise for me was and I think across the board in the company, was the spotlights. The way you would look at week 2, we had a bathroom framed at the one hotel we piloted on. Week 3, the entire bathroom was dismantled. Week 4, it was back reinstalled, and we found out that the framer missed that it was an ADA bathroom and had to tear all the framing out and reframe it for an ADA bathroom. And it was all done in a 2-week period, but we in the office may never have known that happened. And Disperse picked that up.
Yeah. No, that's it. That type of insight, in construction, my view is there's fantastic people. But the problem is it's really hard to continue to find fantastic people. I think that's a common thing, that and implementing technology are the 2 biggest challenges, in construction, and having another set of eyes to help provide these insights that are being missed, not because people aren't paying attention, but because people have 30 things going on every day. And, you need all the help you can get so that your teams continue to deliver the great client experiences that keep winning you work. If you have repetitive clients, that's, a sign of a great company.
That's exactly right. And it's not that our superintendents don't want to give us the accurate data on the schedule, but to go walk a 130-room hotel and to mark a percent complete on every single activity that's going on in that hotel on a weekly basis, it is a monumental task. And to be able to go walk the building in maybe an hour to walk every floor and turn that over to Disperse and have them spit out a report to tell us where it is, and basically get that in a 24-hour turnaround in a very accurate way. It's really invaluable. We can give that to our scheduler and our project managers and really validate the information that's in our P6 schedule.
Yeah. Well, quickly, I want to detour just a little bit and give a little bit of background on the OpenSpace Disperse kind of partnership, how we got to where we are now, show a little bit of the platform. And then based on the questions coming in, I really want to provide enough time to dig into those. And Elliot, I'll look to you as, being the one in the field, in the industry right now, to help provide some insights there as well. So let me share my screen quickly. And it's showing live on my side. Elliot, can you confirm that's showing for me?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So just, a little bit of background. The kind of technology evolution at OpenSpace has been similar to Elliot's, journey of starting with OpenSpace. The captures are the core, part of what, delivers the initial value, and then moving into the progress tracking side. So, with OpenSpace, we have tens of millions of images, from our customers over the 7 years we've been around. And, being an AI first company, we always want to use AI and technology to improve the lives of the people on site. And we did experiment with using AI. We learned a couple things. One, AI is fantastic at certain things. It really struggles in construction. Construction's quite hard. Every job is a different story. You can install duct 20 different ways, and that would be just in one project. So to really give AI the knowledge it needs to report and deliver value was extremely challenging. So we looked for a partner that could leverage OpenSpace's fantastic capture and, use AI for what it's good at, but also, humans need to be involved in the loop. So how could we find a hybrid partner that would help us deliver value across our customer base? So, we found Disperse. They've been around, just over 7 years, much like OpenSpace. And the value they deliver is they do have humans in loop. They have experts reviewing imagery. There's two aspects. One, the technology can't deliver. And two, not everybody wants to just flat out trust technology. There's very much a, trust but verify approach to how technology is being implemented right now, specifically from the AI perspective. Um, just look at the crazy answers you can get out of ChatGPT at times. You don't want that type of stuff happening in an extremely valuable process like a schedule update. So, we partner with Disperse. They have the service side of things. So Disperse can leverage OpenSpace's capture, and then Disperse will step in and they can do a comprehensive and flexible progress tracking setup for your team. Tracking over 700 components in 200 plus, program schedule tasks. And it can be applied to a variety of projects. Elliot mentioned, commercial, hotel, multifamily, it has a wide capability to apply across. So what does that actually look like in practice? There's a few different data sources. There's the core data source of the OpenSpace imagery, and then the Disperse team will collect your project drawings, BIM, and your project schedule, your program. Now, one important thing that I like to say is it's BIM informed, it's not BIM required. That's just because as much progress as BIM has made over the last, 10 years that I've been in technology, it still isn't 100% trusted. So there are going to be things that need to be tracked in the schedule that aren't reflected in BIM. And because of that, Disperse, is creating a comprehensive view with the imagery, the drawings, the models, and the schedule. So they go through a configuration process. They will collect and condense and process all this data and provide a reviewable document, which becomes the basis of progress tracking for your team. So they review that with you. Hey, how does this look? Where do we need to kind of adjust things? They group the components into tasks, typically based on the schedule. And then, they take the imagery, they go through an object and data analysis. As I said, there is technology involved, but to really get valuable data, it's that last part here, the QA by architects and MEP specialists. That's where the real value is delivered by Disperse. And then they push it out into, a variety of ways of reviewing the data. You have your web interface, which I'll show you. You have reporting and dashboards. Those get delivered via email, or you can download them directly from, the web interface. And then Elliot has mentioned a few times the spotlights. So, having humans in the loop means that there's context. What OpenSpace discovered with using AI was it's very binary. Was it installed? Was it not installed? Once it's installed, it won't go back and check again. So it's really hard to understand if something's been removed. Rework is an extremely challenging issue. Infield changes are extremely challenging. And Disperse's team can step in and provide those types of insights via spotlights to deliver the value that your teams need in order to do better work. So they look at things in four basic groups. Your superstructure, so what is the core of the building, keeps it standing. The envelope, what keeps all the water out, makes it able to be functional and livable. MEP, this is called out separately. It is the most impactful to the schedule and budget. So if your MEP is running behind or over, it's a big problem and it'll impact the success of the project overall. And then going into the fit out, the finishes, all of that stuff, they can track all the way down to, if you need to know, are computers on desks so that the company can start to occupy the office, or we just need to track up to drywall because after drywall, we have a lot of confidence in our, process. It can be, ground up, can be renovation. They have the ability to track your demo. There's a lot of flexibility in the platform to match up to what your project team needs out of, the progress tracking data. So I'm going to exit the slides here. I'll jump into the platform really quick. So when you get into this first platform, you start in this executive view. So really high level, where are the, big challenges? So what are the most important trades? You can see the electrical trade, finished drywall, your flooring. Every trade is broken out separately so that you can see exactly what's going on from a high level. management can jump in here, quickly understand where things are at. You have your mechanical trade being tracked. And then if you need to start to understand what's taking place in the building itself, you have this fantastic cross-section view. So the building is broken down. You can see here, all the different units in this building are separated. They have their individual data being shown. You can see here from the data or the legend down here, where has work not been started? That's the gray here. Where are we in progress? Where are we complete? And then the, gray shaded area or hashed area, there's nothing being tracked here, but it's still a space, that's been called out. So you have this overall view here. I can start to filter this down. So I could go in and let's say I want to look at my drywall, my dry lining. Where are we at? Where have we started? What's my progress like? So this is where you can start to see how they're breaking things down by the tasks. And then, here you could go through and say, okay, I want to look at my internal walls. And then even within internal walls, you can start to dig in further. And here's where you see all the components. So you really have rich data that's available to you. So I can filter down to the stud work and you can see, rightly so, some of the stud work's already finished, and that will then let you know that you're probably going into, doing one side of the drywall and moving forward through the process. So you have the ability to dig in just from this view here. You have your overall view, and then you can get really granular as well. Now, it was mentioned the spotlights. I want to touch on one of those. They show up here on the right-hand side. So I can click on it. And what this is showing is, hey, where was work previously done? So you can see that there is wall insulation that was previously in place. It's been removed. The sheetrock's been removed. My guess, there was some type of mechanical, electrical work that got missed and the drywall had to come down. So these are the types of insights that Elliot's team is benefiting from because, like he said, the superintendent can't be spending days walking the job site trying to find these discrepancies. Disperse's team will jump in, they're reviewing the imagery, they have the understanding of what was done previously, what isn't there now, and they identify it and report it back to your team. Beyond this, you can really start to get some schedule insights. So this is more of the progress data. What's our percent complete? How far along are we? But to understand how it relates to the program or the schedule, you have this view here. So I'll pull up the legend. Again, anything showing green means you're on schedule. Red is behind. Purple is ahead. If you do have dark gray, it means there's progress being tracked, but it's not associated with a specific schedule item. So I can click into the floor here. And I have this overview. So right away, color coded, I can see where I'm at. Things are on track. We're behind, we're ahead. I can click into each area and a reporting comes up on the right-hand side here. And it shows me, okay, so my cupboards are ahead of schedule. My internal walls are 5% behind. Tape and joint is moving ahead of schedule. So these areas are moving quite well. If I come over here I can find out, well, my internal walls are only at 5% of 100%. That's a pretty big difference. I can dig into that. So all of this data, it's not just the progress data, it's connecting it to the value of, are we ahead or behind, and where are we ahead or behind? So you get all of this, insight and capability. So two different views here. I can go back and I can actually see what my weekly pace is. So from week to week, how are we doing? Green arrow pointed up, this means you're, moving at an increased pace. Orange arrow down, you're slowing down. If you have a red box, it's a stalled space. 2 or more weeks, there hasn't been progress in these areas. And then horizontal green arrow, slow and steady, you're keeping the same rate of work. Now, this isn't telling you if you're ahead or behind schedule. It's just letting you know where are crews working and are they moving at a faster, percentage of completion this week versus last week. So, percent complete, your, rate of work, how are you looking versus the schedule? And then finally, you can start to download and look through the reports that come, from Disperse. And of course, my internet will fail me now. So let me pop back here. And what I'll do is, I have a sample report pulled up. This is an Excel report that is delivered by the Disperse team on a weekly basis. This starts to show you, what is a component, what is a task, how does it all tie together? And then what is the raw data that's powering all of those views that you have, viewable within this, web interface here. So here you can see you've got your drainage task. Here are the different components. I can scroll down and you can see sometimes there's 2 components, sometimes there's 6. This is the flexibility of Disperse. So, connecting all of this then to the schedule or your program, and you have this view here. It's all macro enabled. I'm on the web just to make it easy to view, so I can't leverage the macros at the moment. But you can see you have your overall percent complete, your by floor. If I wanted to filter down to, say, individual floors, tasks, components, that's all possible here. And the additional value of this is you could then take this and dump it into something like Power BI, start to cut your own analysis, connect it to ERP codes, help with payment applications, things like that. So I'll pause with that quick overview here, and I do want to start attacking some of the questions that have been showing up. So I'm going to stop the share here, and let me start. Scroll back. Lots of interaction, which is fantastic. Let me touch on this one. So, just how is the information fed in? So Disperse has an implementation and setup team. And actually, Elliot, maybe I'll let you touch on that. What was your experience going through the implementation and how they took, the drawings, the models, the schedule, and connected it into the reporting that was delivered to you?
Yeah, we had a kickoff call with Disperse and our team, with our project manager, our project executive, and myself. And we provided them the P6 file, and we did start mid-project. So our projects going forward, now that we have added it enterprise-wide, we'll do it at the beginning. But we gave them our XRE file from P6. We gave them our floor plans, and then we added them to OpenSpace for that project. And then they took the floor plans, they divided it into the areas of how they would recommend tracking the project and the tasks that they would recommend tracking based on the schedule. And then they sent that back to us, asked us to verify that we agree. We did have some tweaks on how we would want to see it tracked a little differently based on how, experience of how we would want to track a hotel. And we gave that back to them, and then they built that out in Disperse after that. Once they had that done, we started the capture process and then the reporting process weekly.
Great. And, there's been a few questions about, what can it track? Will it match up to, say, if you're a trade contractor versus your general contractor? And, the answer is yes. I won't be able to dig through all the different variations, today. Not to be cliche, but if you want to learn more, it really is valuable to set up a call. We'll dig into what are your workflows, what are you looking to gain from progress tracking, and how would it match up to your current, scope of work and things like that. As you can see, there's quite a bit of ability to adapt to different trades. There's a question of electrical. Yes, they can focus on the electrical, kind of workflows, and that's how they would do their reporting. Obviously, for Elliot, being a general contractor, they have a more comprehensive view. They are owning a lot of the risk for the entire project. But we are working with drywall contractors, mechanical contractors, electrical, even down into, say, structural and things like that. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in the system itself. I'm just reading through. There are quite a few questions.
To add to that, as a trade contractor, you may want to know a little bit about the trade in front of you that may impact your work. You may want to know, if you're an electrical contractor, where's the framer at with his work, so that you know if they're impacting your ability to start or finish anything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. We do see the trade contractors not just tracking their work, but using it as a way to verify they can, even mobilize on the work coming up. Questions about receiving the slides and the recording. Yes, we can arrange all of that. We support all stages during construction. How would OpenSpace Disperse help support our customers in the best way possible? So, let me just understand this a little bit more. Yeah, so from a project management and scheduling side, I think it connects to what Elliot has been talking about, getting accurate objective data without putting strain on your team. The benefit of OpenSpace is you can go out and capture quickly, and then those images are shipped over, to Disperse, and their team does what they're great at. And then they deliver really accurate objective data. So you're able to have an updated schedule. You can understand, where things are ahead or behind, and that helps from the entire project management process, just improving communication and providing value in the data are the biggest benefits of the combined solutions. Question about, comparing BIM elements using parameters. I said it was BIM informed. The reason for that is sometimes the model is highly accurate. It has a lot of the information. So they will be using that as a way to set up their tracking data. Now, will they be identifying individual elements and parameters and things like that? It isn't leveraging BIM to that extent, really, because we don't see that often enough to make it a consistent workflow across the customer base. We're looking to deliver, valuable data, not just to BIM-enabled companies, but also companies that aren't quite there yet or have projects where BIM is a contractual requirement, but it's really an empty shell that checks a box. You wouldn't build off it and trust it from that standpoint. Yeah. Question. Yeah, there's a question about, what's dry lining versus drywall, or it is drywall. So dry lining is a UK term. Disperse is based in the UK. So that is drywall for our US customers. Yeah, the question about, showing specific workflows, we just don't have the time to dig into it from like a mechanical side or the civil side. There's also a question about, can drone imagery be used? OpenSpace launched OpenSpace Air, so we host drone imagery now, and the answer is yes. Obviously, the Disperse team would work with, whoever's doing the drone captures to ensure that, the images are collecting what needs to be tracked. And they're fantastic at that. I don't know, Elliot, if you've gotten any feedback from the Disperse team on the capture review to help make sure that the data is accurate throughout the process.
We do get, especially throughout the pilot, we had we didn't use the drone images for that pilot,
Yeah.
but we did have captures that weren't very good, or where the team forgot to hit pause and they went to the second floor and they were merged together, and we had to get with OpenSpace to have them corrected, or the team forgot to do a capture one day and Disperse reached out immediately to say, hey, we're missing something. So we were notified on the project management side extremely quickly that they were missing something to make sure that we could get our reporting back on time.
Very cool. There's a question about using it for industrial piping and civil. That again, connects to the ability to capture with drones. You're not going to walk these large industrial or civil sites, with a 360 camera. Much faster to fly them with a drone. That imagery is an open space. It can be leveraged for doing tracking as well. Let's see here. Yep, mentioned for M&E, the breakout. Yep, trades. Question of, is the progress base entirely off? How much of the install matches the BIM model? If so, how does it see that? Yeah. So how does it see if things are blocked? So it is using the model as the reference to track the progress. Obviously, if it's blocked, there's a couple ways. They can ask for a different view. Sometimes if you triangulate, you can get a view of it. Or, if you see a piece of piping running and then it's obscured, and then it shows up on the other side, the assumption will be made that it didn't just get there magically. The connection continued through the blocked view, and that's how they would, provide the progress data. If that is not, in fact, accurate, the feedback would be provided and the adjustment would be made. Just reading through here. Let me check some of the other Q&A. Integrating 4D scheduling and 5D cost management. So, with 4D scheduling, if you're using a program like Synchro, what is typically done is Disperse is providing an updated native program file. So whether that's ASTA project, MS project, or P6. So with that updated native file, you can push that into a platform like Synchro to update your 4D scheduling. We've had a customer do that. With the 5D cost management, it would be best to kind of dive into that and see what platform you're using and how we can get the information pushed over so that you could update your cost management as well. Question about heavy civil, we've covered that. Is Disperse only beneficial on highly repeatable buildings such as high rises and hospitals? Or is it still beneficial on one-off buildings? Elliot, you want to look at that one?
So that was actually when we were done with our pilot, because we did it on a pilot on a hotel. That was a question I had for Disperse when we were looking at going enterprise-wide, because about half our portfolio is unit construction, either multifamily or hospitality, and the other half of our portfolio is not. And they gave me some really good answers on why it is good on all types of construction. We do a lot of retail, and there's some large retail owners in the United States that have implemented it and made it required, some that we work for, and we weren't aware that they had done that. And so that really changed our mind and changed our mindset that, it is something we needed to do on all projects.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the flexibility of the Disperse platform. It's used with large retailers, with apartments, hotels, sports projects. The ability to deliver value based on the 360 imagery. I think that's the biggest thing, right? In the industry, 360 imagery is valuable, but a lot of the customers I talk to are looking for what's next. How do we get more out of these captures that we're doing? And, the partnership with Disperse is delivering very well from that aspect. There's a couple questions around API connectivity. It would be good to have a focused call on that. So, we can understand what you're trying to connect, between the platforms and your internal workflows. Reading through here, there's a question about MS project. So ASTA MS project, P6, those are the most common platforms. Question about updating BIM parameters. It's not currently being done, but the BIM tracking is something that is coming up more and more. So we'd love to explore that, as an OpenSpace Disperse team and see what you would look for from that standpoint. How do we set up mechanical items to be tracked, and what is the flexibility? So, the implementation process that Elliot spoke about, this Disperse team is collecting all of your data. They will look at the schedule of the program pretty heavily. That's how they help kind of get oriented around things. And then when they provide the initial draft for your review, Elliot, do you want to touch on that again? How your experience was with that, and then how Disperse, kind of matched up with expectations, and then, delivery as well.
Yes. So when we originally contracted the pilot, and they said we contracted, they gave us 3 options. There's a bronze package, a silver package, and a gold package, and that had a different number of activities, total activities. Disperse activities. I took that to be activities in the schedule. Later, I found that to be Disperse activities was activity groups. And you get a lot more activities than what I originally anticipated. That activity group might be 6 to 8 sub activities to it, which might break all your MEPs out into underground plumbing, overhead plumbing, in-wall plumbing, different phases of all of those, and then might be over multiple floors. They will break all of that out for you. into different phases, and you will have a lot of input into what that is based on how you want to see it tracked. They'll give you some guidance, but it's extremely flexible and extremely customizable based on what you want to see.
Excellent. There's a question about, what if the model is not fully complete and is being worked on, throughout construction? I've never heard of a model not being complete. I'm kidding. Everything is evolving, especially with the move to design build. The great thing with Disperse is, they're monitoring your data environment on a, bi-weekly basis, roughly, to check for changes. So as changes come in, they're going to take that and then update, their progress tracking back end in order to reflect accurately, and that goes for the schedule or the program as well. They're not expecting the schedule or program on day one to hold throughout the entire project.
And we set a cadence that on a monthly basis, we're going to provide them a new P6 file. And then we did confirm that you don't have to have a BIM model on every project. So they can provide the tracking on projects without a BIM model.
Yep. Question about, processing time. So, the processing time for OpenSpace, it runs on an average of around 15 minutes to go from capture upload to viewing, globally. That imagery then goes over to Disperse, with the hybrid of AI and then verification with humans. The turnaround time from that standpoint is 36 to 48 hours. Again, it depends on the complexity of a project. Tracking on a hospital is vastly different than tracking in a, hotel or apartment building. There's a question about... Go ahead, Elliot.
And that's consistent with what we had. On our hotel that we did, we have our captures are on Tuesdays for the whole building, and then by Thursday we have our reports.
Perfect. Can it integrate with Power BI? That Excel report that has all of the data, our customers are taking that and pushing that into Power BI, and that's how they would, get the data in there and start using it for their own custom reporting. As a drywall subcontractor, we get a PDF schedule from the GC. Would that be enough to upload and track progress against? Yes, it would be. It's, for our drywall customers, that is what is typically used for the schedule. And then, as Elliot mentioned earlier, the benefit is, having a look ahead. So for drywall, is a floor cleared of all concrete supports? Can you get up there and start stocking, things like that? So it's not just, how is your work going, but can you even get your work started? Is BIM mandatory? Elliot covered that perfectly. Sometimes you only have the drawings. There's a question about, does your solution automatically compare the as-built conditions with the as-designed model? I mean, a geometric and positional validation of elements. For example, checking if a window or specific installation is actually where it's supposed to be. So, there is the ability, leveraging spotlights to call out, items that are installed in the wrong area. Now, obviously, there's going to be a limit to that. It's not running off a point cloud, so you're not going out there and doing terrestrial laser scans. If you were, you would have the accuracy from that. But because it's, leveraging 360 imagery, you are limited by how much you can actually call out. So significant differences will be called out and identified, but if it's, quarter inch type accuracy, it's just not possible. There's still a load of questions in there. We're hitting time now. I don't think we're going to get to everything. I would really encourage you to reach out to your OpenSpace, representative, and we can, set up a call. Let me hit on a couple more here. Do you find it easier to make usage of OpenSpace and Disperse specific to a dedicated person, or is this able to be handled by a project engineer or supervisor? Elliot, what is your kind of take on that?
So in the field, we have various sizes of project teams. We have some projects where we have 10 people on site. We have some projects where we have 2. And any of our project team members can walk an open space capture. A lot of times it's a junior level person that goes and walks it. Sometimes when it's a 2-man team on site, if the junior level person's on vacation the day that it needs to be done, the senior level person walks it. When we get the reports back from a Disperse report, everybody's using the data. From an executive level, I'm logging in and looking at a very high level plan versus actual to know which project I need to look at and spend my time on. Our project managers are using it to talk to subcontractors, project managers, to see who they need to get out there and see why certain things aren't being done. And our superintendents are using the data in their daily huddles and weekly coordination meetings to try to push the schedule in the field. So it's on the Disperse side, everybody's using it. And on the open space side, it's so simple to use and do the captures that everybody's capable of doing it.
Yeah. Great. And last question related to scanning, 2 parts, can terrestrial scans be uploaded? The answer is yes from the OpenSpace side. We can host terrestrial scans through the BIM Plus aspect. And then there is the ability, if you have a Apple Pro device, so iPhone Pro, iPad Pro, there's a built-in LiDAR scanner there. So if you need to verify, especially in like a mechanical room, you're not going to send a terrestrial scanner out. You can leverage that built-in LiDAR scanner to do a quick scan of, say, one side of the room and upload that into OpenSpace to give you, much higher accuracy than a 360 image in order to check clearances. More importantly, will the equipment even fit in through the opening? You obviously don't want to put an opening in place if you have equipment that needs to slide in place first. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Please, if you have any further questions, you can reach out to myself, sean.phillips@openspace.ai. If you have an OpenSpace representative, please reach out to them as well. And then a big thanks to Elliot for being here. The feedback and answers you provided have been fantastic. So thank you so much for your time today. And I know you're taking an early weekend tomorrow, so enjoy your long weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.